Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Football Baron podcast as we go over some of the matches that occurred this match day in the Premier League, with Liverpool and Manchester United dominating in their matches and putting in some strong performances, as well as some individual performances that should be highlighted, and we will go over. We'll also be covering some of the transfer news that is surrounding specifically the Bundesliga, with reports of Kai Havertz and his update on Chelsea transfer, as well as Thiago from Bayern potentially moving to Liverpool with interest from Klopp, as well as, of course, in the Premier League, a contract extension for a controversial player for Arsenal, David Luiz, who has received a one-year extension at the club. Going into the Manchester City versus Burnley game, if Man City lost to Burnley, it would lead to Liverpool only needing to win one game against Crystal Palace in order to secure and clinch the title. However, it was instead a dominant 5-0 win for Manchester City against Burnley, with product from their academy, Phil Foden, scoring a brace, as well as Riyad Mahrez, the Algerian, scoring a brace as well, putting in together a dominant performance for Manchester City. Now, Tottenham was going into a game against West Ham, who was struggling with relegation potentially looming in their future in the Premier League, and a move to the Championship could be likely for the team. However, Tottenham did not give West Ham any hope, securing a 2-0 win against West Ham and securing 3 solid points. And one of the key highlights was Harry Kane scoring a goal, a long time since he's played football where he scored a goal after his injury, which sidelined him for months, and he has officially returned, slowly returning to his original form. Now, Tottenham played very well this game. Mourinho's side did very, very well, with their defense looking solid. Specifically, Serge Aurier, who looks very compromised sometimes with some silly mistakes that he really shouldn't be taking. But he looked very strong on the ball and off the ball. He was positioning himself fairly well on the wing and serving as a good attacking fullback option. And Dele Alli, who unfortunately still does not look to his full best. But Heung-min Son is looking as well solid in terms of coming back into the game after the restart. He did have a goal, but it was chalked off after the VAR reviewed it and recognized that it was offside. But one of the main things that should be focused on was Lo Celso and Harry Kane. Lo Celso was looking fantastic off the ball and is definitely a great replacement for Christian Eriksen. Although he wasn't intended for that, with Christian Eriksen moving to Inter Milan due to him not wanting to stay at Tottenham anymore, he's definitely taken the place of Christian Eriksen. Not the exact replica of Christian Eriksen, but he does a very solid job and won man of the match for the game, just due to the way he passed in between players of West Ham, and his off-the-ball movement really got Spurs going, and one of the main reasons that they were able to win the game. And another key player, Harry Kane, managed to do very well and was looking fairly strong, with him getting a couple shots in, warming up, and working towards that match sharpness that many of these Premier League strikers are trying to get back into after the restart. And Harry Kane did ultimately score a goal, and he's one goal behind. Ultimately, he didn't top or tie Sergio Aguero for the most goals after 200th appearances. But Harry Kane is second in that leaderboard, and definitely a solid achievement and a good step for Tottenham in getting one of their biggest players getting back into the goal-scoring groove, and potentially help Tottenham in the later season and, of course, into next season. Manchester United against Sheffield United put in a strong series of performances, with many of their key individual players putting in a solid performance as well, with Anthony Martial specifically getting a hat-trick, something that Manchester United hasn't seen until Robin van Persie years ago, but definitely a solid achievement from them. Now, looking specifically at some of their key players, Bruno Fernandes and Pogba were hyped up to do very well, and they were a lot of hope that the two would work well together and produce a solid presence in the midfield. And boy, did they really deliver. Paul Pogba was doing more of a holding role in the midfield as Bruno Fernandes pushed up further, and the two paired really well. And Pogba specifically was doing some good dribbles later in the game, where he nutmegged a couple players and potentially could have done a chance that could have been a goal, but unfortunately it didn't turn out to be so for him. And Bruno Fernandes was putting in a couple of good tap-ins and passes to other Manchester United players, and definitely fueling and building up the attack. And ultimately, Manchester United did score 3-0, putting in a secure and solid performance. Now, looking at Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes, I think that these two players are very, very important for Manchester United for the future. I think that these two could be very, very, very crucial for the team. Now, Bruno Fernandes, when he was brought in, really did change the team for the better. And I think bringing Bruno Fernandes in with Paul Pogba, I think could be a strong partnership. And a lot of people talk about Paul Pogba and how he did in the World Cup and for the French team. He has a lot of good players around him. And I think that Bruno Fernandes with Paul Pogba, and maybe if Manchester United spend in the transfer market, which they most likely should, it could lead to a strong and great development between the two, and a strong midfield presence like they just had in the Sheffield United game. Granted, Sheffield United was strongly weakened with a lot of their defensive players suspended and some of them out for injury, but still a good start for Manchester United in building a foundation for a strong midfield which they could potentially branch out of. And, of course, with Anthony Martial, who, if he can put in those strong performances consistently and with that clinical finishing in front of the goal, then, of course, Manchester United could very well look like a very, very, very strong team in the future with, of course, new signings coming in the transfer window for Manchester United. Liverpool as well put in a dominant performance against Crystal Palace. Now, Crystal Palace has played quite well, fairly, despite losing multiple times. In the last 3 matches, Liverpool did win against Crystal Palace, but it was fairly close with scorelines such as 4-3 and 1-0 in the side of Liverpool. Now, in the end, it was a dominant win, not something you usually see in a Liverpool versus Crystal Palace game, with Roy Hodgson's side very, very well structured and very well organized. Now, it was a strong start with Trent Alexander-Arnold taking a free kick after a free kick was won, and Trent Alexander-Arnold put in a David Beckham style free kick, as Jamie Carragher said in the commentary, and it was a beautiful and very tough for the goalkeeper, Hennessy, for Crystal Palace to potentially even block it. Now, another goal came in with Mo Salah receiving a solid pass by Fabinho, and Fabinho would later score a killer goal way outside of the penalty box, and my goodness, if you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. It was something else. And another great goal came in with Sadio Mane receiving a beautiful pass from Mo Salah, and that goal was combined from all the front three who perfectly orchestrated that goal. And Sadio Mane received a goal as well alongside Mo Salah, and Firmino was putting in a solid performance as well. Now, this Liverpool side was different from Everton, specifically with Mo Salah coming back into the front three, with the original front three being present for the Crystal Palace game, and Andy Robertson coming in as left back, with James Milner no longer having to cover for him. Now, I think this is the team that majority of us expect to face any team. It's the strongest 11 that Liverpool really has. And of course, there are some various combinations that Liverpool can do in the midfield. But I do think that Liverpool is strongest when they field this type of team, which is very attacking mindset. Specifically, what was missing in the Everton game was, of course, Andrew Robertson and Mo Salah. Specifically, more Andrew Robertson, I say, because he's marauding up the left flank, and I think you need that speed and stamina that he has to run past on the wing and really threaten the opposition team's defense. And he does a great job of that. And I think bringing him back after there was a couple of worries over his injury, and bringing him back after with him hopefully fully recovered could mean a strong potential finish for Liverpool in winning the title. against potentially Manchester City. Now that if they can win the title potentially at Man City, definitely something they should strive to look forward to, facing the team that has held them back from winning the title so often. But definitely a strong performance from Liverpool. Now going into some transfer news that's circling around the Premier League and the Bundesliga is, of course, Thiago of Bayern Munich, who is a midfielder, Spanish midfielder. Is potentially, there's talks and considerations of him moving to Liverpool, with him interested in moving to such a dominant side in the Premier League. And of course, we've seen that Liverpool can and will attract interest. Now, this is with any winning side, with players always looking to go to a strong and a potential great future side. Now, Thiago, who is very, very, very good midfielder. Now, I don't know if it would be a real good addition. I think that Liverpool should really focus on more alternatives for the back four. They need fullbacks. They need extra fullbacks. For the Crystal Palace game, they brought in Williams, a backup for Trent Alexander-Arnold, but I don't think that he can do it right away. I don't think he will be a solid replacement for him if he gets injured, Alexander-Arnold, in the future. I don't think he would be a good backup to step in right away. Now, Thiago could, of course, be a great addition for the midfield, but I feel the midfield has more of a physical role than a technical role in terms of stamina and just speed, and really being the workhorse of the Liverpool team. And of course, it's also the fullbacks, but I feel that the fullbacks should be given more of the attacking role, and the midfield should be more of a controlling position, like Liverpool is already doing, and more of a physical workhorse that Liverpool can rely on. Specifically, we see it with Jordan Henderson, James Milner, Gini Wijnaldum. They're just very strong physical and players with some great stamina that Liverpool relies on. And of course, another transfer news saga that's going around is Chelsea receiving Kai Havertz from Bayer Leverkusen in the Bundesliga. Now, when talking to Frank Lampard in a press conference, he was asked whether more new news regarding Kai Havertz to potentially Chelsea, but he told the press conference and the reporters that Chelsea has yet to make a bid for Kai Havertz. Now, this doesn't mean that Chelsea won't be looking to move for Kai Havertz, or they don't want him on the team, but I do believe that it really decreases the likelihood of Kai Havertz moving to Chelsea, as it was very hyped up that he would move to Chelsea with Timo Werner, and those two German players would go to Chelsea and the Premier League. But it looks like it's decreasing, and with Liverpool also not willing to, I very highly likely, I doubt them taking the chance, because of course Liverpool is being very fiscally conservative with buying up players, especially during the coronavirus, where revenue goes down for them. Now, I think the only team that could also be an option is Bayern Munich in picking up Kai Havertz. They always take some of the local players from the Bundesliga, some of the great local players into their team, and I think he could do well. He could definitely play. He could serve as a replacement for Thomas Müller, but it's very clouded now what his future is, and I think it's now tending to lean over to Bayern Munich, but we never know until the deal is finally done. A controversial decision happened with Arsenal Football Club, where David Luiz, their defender who has made some very, very poor mistakes defensively for Arsenal, has received a contract extension. There was a widespread belief that he would, leave the club, because many supporters of Arsenal were very disappointed and do not really like David Luiz serving as one of their most pivotal players in the defense, and I think that it's a very poor decision for Arsenal. Now, David Luiz is, I think he's just doing very poorly. He's conceded quite a bit of penalties. I think it was his fourth penalty that he conceded in the Manchester City game. And he makes these mistakes quite consistently, and I don't think it's something that Arsenal need defensively if they want to look bright and sharp for the future. Now, Mikel Arteta said he wanted to renew David Luiz's contract, and I think it's a poor decision. Either it's Mikel Arteta really does believe in David Luiz, or Arsenal isn't willing to really spend any money to find a new center back. Now, I think there are a lot of options, but Arsenal needs to find a center back that's strong, leadership wise, and I don't see that in David Luiz, and strong in really organizing the defense, which I also don't see in David Luiz. And now that they've lost one of their most important goalkeepers, their number one, Bernd Leno, I think it's looking very, very grim for Arsenal in the future. Because if Arsenal can't have a solid back line, then what is the purpose of keeping players like Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang? If he's expected to score goals, what's the point for him to keep scoring goals and staying at Arsenal if all that's going to happen is his back line with players like David Luiz just faltering and leading to a goal coming in, and all his hard work or his work to scoring for Arsenal is just thrown out of the window. Now, I don't see if he's going to be playing more of a leadership role. Mikel Arteta says that he's a great leader, but if he's going to be playing consistently, then he definitely needs to pick up his performances if he wants to receive any support from the fans. Many fans specifically responded quite poorly, and I completely understand it because I don't think he's a good player at this level to serve as, for a big club like Arsenal, to serve as a center back. And Arsenal really do need a new center back that will serve as the future for the team. Now, moving on into the upcoming matches for the Premier League. For tomorrow will be Chelsea versus Manchester City. Frank Lampard will be looking to widen the gap between Chelsea and Manchester United for Champions League qualification, and I think a win or a draw would do quite well for Manchester United, for Chelsea specifically, in holding Champions League football and keeping Manchester United at an arm's length. Now, they will be under pressure with Manchester United in a dominant win, getting 3 points to close the gap, but it's something that Chelsea will be looking forward to. Now, some of their players, such as Christian Pulisic, who was on the field against Aston Villa, could potentially be featuring in the starting lineup. And, of course, Christian Pulisic, who scored a goal coming off the bench, was a key role in bringing Chelsea back from that game. But he could play a role again in the Manchester City game. And Manchester City, of course, will be without Sergio Aguero, who was lost due to injury in the previous game against Burnley. And Manchester City could also look forward to Phil Foden. Phil Foden has received a lot of praise for his performances in the Burnley game, where he received man of the match. And I think he is definitely a great future prospect for Manchester City. And some are saying that Pep Guardiola isn't playing him enough and really shortening and stalling the growth of Phil Foden. Now, I think Pep Guardiola, of course, in my opinion, I always want younger players to get more playing time and actually develop, because it's always amazing seeing young players develop into amazing players. But I don't think he will get. I think maybe next season he should be playing more, but if it doesn't happen, then Phil Foden should definitely look to force a move away, because if he can't get consistent playing time, and if he doesn't get played more, then his development's really being stalled out, and he won't have any problem trying to find a new team. I'm sure there's a lot of interest in having such a talented midfielder, but of course Chelsea. For my prediction, I think that Manchester City is just far better than Chelsea, and Manchester City will win out against Chelsea. Another match that is coming up tomorrow is Arsenal versus Southampton. Now, for my prediction, I do think that Southampton will win. Arsenal is looking far too weak at this current moment, and Mikel Arteta, Arsenal could rebound. I think that's also a strong possibility. But I think that Southampton would win. I think some of their key players, such as Danny Ings, is looking quite strong after the restart, with him scoring a goal in a fixture right after the Premier League restarted. And I think that he could play a key role. But Arsenal does not look very strong at the moment, and I don't rate them for winning the game. I think it could be a strong possibility that it's a draw, but then again, after that Brighton game, my hope for them is very little, with their goalkeeper most definitely out of the game because of the injury that he received against in the Brighton game. And I don't know how long he will be out, but his absence will be a massive hit. And if David Luiz is starting, you never know with him. He could also make a mistake that potentially ruins the game for Arsenal. But of course, that will be the last segment for this podcast. I just want to thank everyone for watching and listening to this episode of the podcast. If you guys did like it, make sure to follow us or subscribe to us on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to. And if you are watching on YouTube, or if you are not watching on YouTube, our YouTube is Football Baron, and we post clips, smaller clips of the podcast into more shorter formats that you can listen to. And if you are listening on YouTube, please subscribe and hit the like button. It really is appreciated. And of course, thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye.